Now we get to the problem of translation, and I want to show you an exchange that Jung had late in his life. This is 1958. With the Zen master Shinichi Hisamatsu. Now, Mr. Hisamatsu was a Zen scholar and professor of Buddhism at Kyoto University, and he visited Jung at his home in Küsnacht. Jung is quite old at this time. He's not terribly well, but he's still very lively, intellectually sharp, and he agrees to have a dialogue with this Zen master. And this dialogue was recorded, but wasn't published for a long time. One heard about it, but where is it? It was very hard to find. And then Daniel Meckel and Robert Moore, a member of our society here in Chicago, produced this book, published this book, Self and Liberation, the Jung Buddhism Dialogue, in which they included this exchange between Jung and Hisamatsu. Now, if you can follow me, I'll just read through this text, and I'll comment on it a bit as we go, but you'll see the difficulties in translation now, okay? This is a serious dialogue. They're actually trying to understand one another. Dialogue is different from conversation or exchange. We can have an exchange of views. You tell me something, I tell you something, we shake hands and say, fine. But a dialogue is a serious encounter in which there are two positions, firmly established and firmly held, and one person explains his or her position, and the other one explains theirs, and they compare and they contrast and they try to figure out, is there any common ground here? Where do we differ? Where are we similar? Over and over again in his writings on the East, Jung says, it is very, very difficult for a Westerner like me to understand the writings of the East. They think so differently. They start from the end and they move to the beginning. We start at the beginning and we move to the end. They start with a conclusion and then draw all the implications of that conclusion. We build up from the bottom. So to understand the way another culture thinks is a big challenge. And here he's trying to think with this Zen master. And this man really was a master. He was recognized in Japan as one of the great ones of his day. So Hisamatsu says, the essential point of this liberation, Hisamatsu comes to him and says, I want to discuss how Zen Buddhism compares to what you try to do in psychoanalysis. Are our goals similar? Are they different? Jung says, well, you know, I'm a psychologist. I speak as a psychologist, not as a philosopher. You speak as a philosopher and a religious person. Hisamatsu says, well, Zen Buddhism isn't really a philosophy. It isn't really religion. Maybe we can have a conversation. So they begin exchanging some points. And at this point in the dialogue, Hisamatsu says, the essential point of this liberation, because we're both Zen and Jungian psychoanalysis are interested in liberation, of this liberation is how we can be awakened to our original self. That's his term, original self. The original self is the self which is no longer bound by a myriad of things. To attain this self is the essential point of freedom. It is necessary, therefore, to release oneself, even from the collective unconscious, and the bondage which derives from it. Well, what does Jung reply to that? Can we release ourselves from the collective unconscious, from the archetypes, from the complexes? Can we really get free of all that? Jung says, if one is caught in the myriad of things, and thus bound within it, This is because he is caught within the collective unconscious at the same time. He can be freed only when he is liberated from both of them, from the world of things, the outer things, and from the inner world of attachments to pet ideas and philosophies, and everything that's archetypal, and the collective, and one's own culture. That's all part of the collective unconscious. One person may be dragged along more by the unconscious, another by things. One is more, the introverts are influenced more by the unconscious, by the inner world, extroverts more attached to things. In short, through liberation, man must be brought to a point where he is free from the compulsion to chase after a myriad of things, or from being controlled by the collective unconscious, chasing after outer things, money, women, whatever strikes you as interesting, outer things, all that, fun, consumerism, or inner things, pet ideas, religion, culture. Be freed from your religion, your religious concepts and ideas. Be freed from all of that. Both are fundamentally the same, nirvana. You get to nirvana by being freed of these attachments. Hisamatsu says, in what you have just said about the unconscious, Professor Jung, do you mean that the collective unconscious is something from which, in its nature, we can free ourselves?